the reading, Hope is the Thing with Feathers, has a very idiosyncratic meaning to me personally. It's not one that Ms. Emily Dickinson could ever have imagined, and one certainly did not intend. So fair warning, what I'm about to share would probably get you a big old F in English class. Don't try this at home, but I'll share it anyway. Now, when I was a little kid, I was crazy about dinosaurs, as many children are. And I read every picture book and science book I could get my hands on about them. And people back then, which would have been the 70s, had lots of goofy ideas about dinosaurs that we now know were wrong, or at least the picture books did. That T-Rex walked on two legs like Godzilla, that Brontosaurus had an extra brain in his tail, all kinds of incorrect scientific information thrown my way. But the most incorrect bit of scientific dino knowledge that I grew up with is the idea that dinosaurs were extinct, victims of some terrible ecological catastrophe, which sounds uncomfortably familiar, that phrase. But now we know that that's not true. Dinosaurs live on all around us, but they live on around us as birds. In fact, they found fossils of dinosaurs now with preserved feathers or proto-feathers on them. Even the mighty T-Rex may have had feathers. We found a fossil skeleton of a cousin that had feathers. So for all we know, if the movie Jurassic Park were accurate, the rampaging T-Rex bearing down on Jeff Goldblum would look like the world's biggest, angriest chicken. So for me, the thing with feathers is a symbol of the resilience and creativity and endurance of life. That which was thought to be extinct actually endures, survives, transforms. Life is continuously unfolding, continuously changing, continuously in bud. Life takes flight. Show of hands. How many people guessed? Well, it's Easter Sunday, so of course he's going to talk about dinosaurs. Because, of course, it is Easter Sunday today, the culmination of Holy Week in the Christian tradition. It is also Passover week for the Jewish tradition. And this Tuesday is Earth Day, so we have the convergence of three traditions, two ancient, one very new, that strongly resonate with our Unitarian Universalist values and principles and purposes. Our religious tradition, as you use, began in and grew out of Judeo-Christianity. So these holidays and the ideas they represent have powerfully shaped and informed our values and our aspirations. Passover celebrates the freeing of the Jews from their captivity in Egypt, as recounted in the book of Exodus, and the beginning of their journey through the desert towards the Holy Land. And it is a powerful celebration of freedom and self-determination, of new life and new possibility. Freedom, both spiritual freedom and earthly freedom, is a core principle for Unitarian Universalism. Right? We're grateful for the spiritual freedom we enjoy within our own tradition, the freedom to live out our own life's path and have our own beliefs and follow the dictates of our own heart and our own conscience. We're grateful for the earthly freedom we enjoy within our own country. And yet we are also aware of the many ways in which people here and all over the world are still in chains, shackled by poverty or discrimination, or threat of violence or tyranny. And so we're committed to a vision of freedom for all, to the release of all people from bondage of whatever kind, to self-determination for all people. Easter celebrates, for Orthodox or Trinitarian Christians, the triumph of humanity over death through the resurrection of Jesus. In its mythic form, it's a powerful story of new life and new possibility. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, we have many different ideas about the theology of Easter, but we celebrate together the enduring power of Jesus' vision of love, peace, and humanity, the survival of his message over the empires past and present that have tried to stamp it out and suppress it. It is Jesus' practice of radical hospitality that we take forward so strongly in our own tradition. His insistence of welcoming the despised and the outcast to his table, and saying that all people are worthy of love, that all people have a relationship with the divine, that all people in his language are God's children and our brothers and sisters. So on Easter we remember with gratitude that love endures, Whatever earthly powers may be brought to bear against it, love endures. And that brings us to our third tradition. And I don't mean to disrespectfully conflate Earth Day, born 1971, I think, with Easter and Passover, right? One of these things is not like the other. But Earth Day, as celebrated as by UUs, does reflect our growing understanding that any religion that wants to speak meaningfully to the human condition must speak about our relationship to the earth. Last week I said we need a new story about our relationship with the earth. And that story, that vision, as we develop it and as we live into it, is, I submit, as potentially transformative and life-enriching and life-altering as any other religious teaching. And it is every bit as urgently needed. So it is fitting that we bring these three holidays together, because Passover and Easter are also holidays about new stories and new beginnings. But we have only begun to love the earth, the poet writes. So much is unfolding that must complete its gesture. So much is in bud. Today ends our year-long journey through the 7 principles. We've explored one principle every month this church year, beginning with our first principle that expresses our deep commitment to individual human worth and dignity. And then we explored all the ways in which we express that commitment to human dignity in our inward life, and our church life, and our social life, through our commitment to justice, equity, and compassion, through acceptance of one another, through intellectual and spiritual freedom, through working for world peace and world community. And then we closed with our 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of existence, of which we are all a part. That's our youngest principle, the newest, and it widens the scope of our religious vision considerably, and it deepens our religious commitments, calling for a new relationship not just between person and person, but between humanity and the natural world. Now, we are a young religion, speaking of a new story. Our 7 principles came together in their final form in 1985. They were not dictated by a committee or handed down from above. They emerged through a remarkable grassroots process of discussion and consensus building, which was actually begun by Unitarian Universalist women who were dissatisfied with the language of the old principles and the old statements of purpose. And in the end, these principles were adopted by overwhelming majority. Amazing if you think about it, getting all UUs to agree on anything, especially something including words, but it did by overwhelming majority. And out of that process, something new emerged, right? This was not just some updating of what had been before to erase some sexist language and make it more inclusive. A new story came out of this process when we added that 7th principle, when we rethought our commitment to our earlier principles. And congregations bought into that story, right? They could have just voted on that language and let it die and ignored it and went back to what they were doing. But instead, churches all over the country spontaneously adopted the principles and made them central to their vision of what their churches would do and how their churches would live and what it means for us to covenant together. So together, our 7 principles represent an audacious vision, one which, if truly lived, could transform the world. We're a famously optimistic religion. We believe in the potential of the human mind and the human spirit. We believe that the application of intelligence and ethical thinking can make a difference in the world, that ideas and ideals can make a better course for the human story. And we believe in the power of love to ultimately reclaim hatred and division and bring humanity back into wholeness. Ours is a religion of hope. And ultimately, we are the instruments of that hope, that thing with feathers that fills our spirits with song, that lifts us up. It is our lives, our loves, our dedication that make hope a reality. I ask today that we be worthy stewards of our great tradition, and may the age-old dream of humanity for peace be as a seed planted in us, rising green to bring a new day. But we have only begun to love the earth, the poet writes. So much is unfolding that must complete its gesture. so much is in Bud. Blessed be, and may it be so. Would you please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn number 1068 in your teal hymnal, Rising Green.